Good morning, beloved beings. Well, it's morning where I am. Today I want to tell you a story about gratitude, counting your blessings. Now, many years ago, after my son was born, we lived in an area that it wasn't progressive in any way, even medically. So we had a difficult time getting a diagnosis so we could start to set in motion services and things like that. So I finally got a doctor to give a diagnosis, and my son had, his diagnosis was spastic quadriplegia form of cerebral palsy with severe disabilities. Now, semantics dictate that that's what his diagnosis is, but doing my own research, I found that he really is a double hemiplegic and with alternating spasticity. So he can be flaccid or spastic, but mostly he's spastic. And it's different on each side. So basically what that means is he got brain damage on one side of his head, and then he was injured on the other side of his head again and has damage on both sides. So the damage didn't occur at exactly the same moment on both sides, and he received brain damage on both sides of his head. However, that matters only to me. I'm the only person that cares about that. And basically it's the same thing as being a quadriplegic. So it's in terms of his care, it means nothing. So we finally get this diagnosis. Shortly after the diagnosis, we had to go for an MRI for my son because this is before he started having seizures, but it was on the borderline of when the seizures began. And during that time in the hospital, it was, like a day appointment. They took him in. They had to knock him out because he couldn't be still enough for them to do it without knocking him out. And so hours go by, and we're waiting to go home because the test has been done and everybody's gone home except for us. We're still waiting, and we're sitting in the waiting room with my son, and he's fully awake and he's fully himself. And so the nurse comes in to check him again, and we ask her, why can't we go home? And she said, well, he can't hold his head up. Well, no, he can't hold his head up. She didn't read the chart, and he has cerebral palsy, and he can't hold his head up. Oh. So she runs out and calls the doctor, and the doctor says, yes, let him go home. So we got to leave. So later on, I'm looking for places for services, and somehow I get in touch with Shriners Hospital. And Shriners, if you don't know, they help families that have children with all kinds of disabilities. They have special burn hospitals. They have special orthopedic hospitals. They have special neurological hospitals. And so my son comes under the heading of neurological, but he has orthopedic problems as well. So the hospital we were assigned to is in Shreveport, Louisiana. From where I lived in Oklahoma City, that was quite a long way. But Shriners is really good about providing transportation. So they take everybody in the area that has an appointment for that day to the hospital. So we leave the day before, we drive in a big van with several moms or dads, one adult per child, and then all these kids with disabilities. So there might be, 4 or 5 kids, maybe as many as 6, and their parents, and we're all in one of these big vans, and there's generally 2 Shriners. They take 2 so that they can trade out drivers and, keep track of everybody. So we get to the hotel and we check in, and they pay for everything. They provide the transportation, they provide hotel overnight, they take us to the hospital the next morning. I can't remember if they provide meals. This was 30 years ago, I don't remember, but they may provide meals, but I'm not positive, or they may provide one meal. I can't remember. At any rate, it's mostly inclusive. They take you to the hospital, and then you check in. You have an appointment time, but basically it's they take you as you sign in. So we get to the hospital early. We sign in so that we can be in an order for them to call, and generally either all the appointments will be in the morning or all the appointments will be in the afternoon, so that they have a geographical area all in the same block of appointments. So we get there, and this is our first time, and my son is small, and I'm sad, and he's, he's a happy child, but he is severely disabled, and so he's small. He was around a year and a half or 2 years old when we finally were able to get all of this in motion. And he loves people, and he's having a blast looking at all the people and, jabbering. He can't speak, but he's jabbering to all the other kids and whatnot. And I don't know what to expect, and, I'm just sitting there trying to observe. And I see a family with a child that looked to be about 7 years old. And it's their first time too. And this child is more involved physically than I've seen most of the other kids. There's all level of disability with these kids. Some of them function fairly well. Some of them have very limited function. And this child didn't seem to have any function. He was just laying in what they had brought him in. I can't remember if it was a wheelchair or a stroller, but as I said, he was about 7 years old, looked to be, not a real small child, but still pretty small. And his parents looked devastated. And you hear things, the parents talk, and we talk about our kids and challenges that we're going through and all of that, and you can tell who are the first timers and who aren't, who've been there for a while and they know the drill. And this family was so sad, and so it started to get around among the other parents. This child had been normal. He wasn't born that way. And he had, I think was pneumonia or something. And he got a really high temperature. I want to say it was 107 is what I heard. And he got extreme, severe brain damage. and they were dealing with having to get used to a new life from having had a normal little boy to now having this poor child that couldn't do anything. So we were all heartbroken. We grieved with this family for the child they lost and tried to help them see that there was still something to celebrate and be grateful for. Somebody always has it worse than you. No matter what challenges you're going through and facing, there's always someone who has a greater challenge, has been given a harder lesson, and feeling sorry for yourself because you have this terrible problem. And I'm not saying your problem isn't terrible, but if you stop and look around, you will see that there are always people going through greater challenges than you are. We have to be grateful for what we have. Whatever we have, we need to be grateful for it, because it could be so much worse. Now, I didn't intend for this to be very emotional, but it did. I guess it turned out that way. It's okay to be sad and to grieve and to have your heart broken for your own circumstances. But try to remember that someone else may have a challenge that is far greater than what you're facing. When we think about what our neighbors over in Ukraine are going through, when we think about, maybe it's our neighbor next door, or our neighbor down the street, or our neighbor over in another state, the challenges that we're facing sometimes pale in comparison. So, my beloved, be grateful for everything you have. And so today is the summer solstice. I wanted to use a new deck I haven't worked with yet, except for I did draw a card this morning. The card I drew this morning was, this is the Oracle of Shadows in White. Lucy Cavendish with the artwork by Jasmine Beckett Griffith. Now, I drew a card this morning, and it was number 1 card, strangely. I did shuffle it, but number 1 came up first, and that was the Ghost of the Pumpkin Patch. And its message was to count your blessings. So when I got that card, I thought this was a story that I needed to tell today. And I don't think of my stories much before I sit down and record them. I try to come up with an idea earlier in the day from when I record, and so that's the one that came to me today that I needed to share today. So now I'm going to call in my guides, my ancestors, the angels, the ascended masters, all of those beings that help me, that are my spiritual team, and that confer with the spiritual teams of all of you, to let me know what is the message that I need to share today about being grateful, about counting our blessings. And because today is the summer solstice and we have equal shadow and equal light. And I thought this would be a fitting deck for that. Let's see. And so, what do they want us to know today? Okay, 3 came out. All right. We'll see what they say. Well, that's interesting. I got the power of 3. 3 witch sisters. The next card is the Grumpy Red Fairy. And I may have to put my glasses on. Be your true self. And the third card was Marie Masquerade. Glamour, intrigue, and drama. Interesting cards. The power of 3. Fortify yourself. Be grateful for those around you. Be yourself. Be that grumpy red fairy. And Marie Masquerade. Glamour, intrigue, and drama. Don't let all that stuff interfere with your ability to be who you are and join with the community to make yourself stronger. Be grateful for all that you have, including the community. Well, my beloved beings, I'm going to leave that there. And until next time.